And we're back with another episode of the Pursuit of Ownership. We're going to be switching gears up a little bit. I have our very esteemed guest co-host on again, George Hariri. We are doing a little something different compared to the underwaters that I used to have him on for. Honestly, I got a little bit tired of him stealing the show, but now I'm having him on to talk about something that's very near and dear to our hearts. And so we'll see if he tries to steal it back from me again this time, but I might try and rein him in a little bit.
I got two things from you. One, I don't like the Richard. Are you doing this because Richard did it? He's like, I have our very own. Like, he introduced me in like some type of like hyped up way, and then you just did the same thing right now. I'm like, oh gosh, like just this is just George. Just
to be fair, I think everyone's an esteemed guest. It's not you're not
okay.
special.
It's not just okay. Good.
I do. I
want to make sure that good.
I would do it for Aaron. I would do it for Aaron if that means anything. It's a courtesy.
Oh, that makes me feel so much better. Aaron deserves to get roasted. I mean, I feel like I roasted him. You know, he needs some more roasting on air. Aaron is Aaron and Clay second to Aaron.
Well, we're trying to draw him out of his hole. You know,
there you go.
he's got this crazy thing where he's like taking care of his family and his life and his transition out of dental school, and he's not spending time with his podcast buddies.
Yes,
and talking with the red button on. It's just driving me crazy.
It is. Yeah, it's roast worthy. So Aaron, if you're listening, you know that's your roast. So we took it easy on him. But yeah, I'm excited for today's episode. I feel like Tyler has. So by the way, I want to introduce you today as he's been known as intern on the show.
Yeah,
and you know, we're talking in this episode about leadership development and. Tyler, I think we should go through some backstory first, so the story makes more sense.
Why are we here?
Yeah, so my first time talking to, a therapist is something I've talked about on Dental Friends with Benefits, and I'll not talk about it a whole lot. I talked about it on season 5. It actually took me a long time to get on air and say I see a therapist. I think it took me 18 months of seeing a therapist to get on air and say I see a therapist.
Yeah. And do you think that was more just sort of a personal thing that you had against it, or just sort of like general stigma about seeing therapists?
I think it's general stigma, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's not cool.
Yeah,
and I think it's as a man doing a show for other men, like 80% of our audience is men, statistically. Yeah. So that's just not, you're cognizant of that. And I don't go around telling my guy friends that I see a therapist. And so I definitely am not going to go around telling my podcast audience I see a therapist.
Right.
And I think it was just me being willing to take a stand and say, I'm just willing to do something super uncomfortable for the better mental health of the entire people listening. Yeah. And so I did that. And
tackle the cult of masculinity we have here in the Western United States.
And, I see both a therapist and a life coach. And I think in this episode, we'll talk more about life coaching and the role it has versus, and then a therapist itself. But, I think some people ask, and I'll just explain, the role of a therapist versus a life coach is a therapist is very much looking at, your childhood traumas, your family dynamics, your all of that stuff and how it impacts or shows up in your life today. Versus life coaching is very much looking at, your life today. How is it compared to the dreams you have for tomorrow?
Right.
And specifically with leadership, a lot of my life coaching has to do with leadership. And in our mastermind, we've really built, I think Matt is a certified life coach, and, I have received life coaching. And so between him and I, we've seen a lot of value in the leadership development that's possible by working on yourself.
Certainly.
And so this is kind of a continuation in my mind of the episode I did with Richard in season 5. Did you listen to that one?
Yes.
This is
saying so provisionally. It might be a little fuzzy in my mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was like a year and a half ago. So
yeah, it's been a minute.
Or I guess it's 8 months ago. We recorded at VOD. But it was essentially that leadership and personal development are like very closely linked. That was kind of the gist of the show is lead as who you are, and your personal development and leadership development. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where Mastermind came in, is that we felt like we needed to have an environment where we're really developing leaders of practices. And I think one thing that's very vague is the effect that leadership has. And so, Tyler, how long ago did you start seeing a life coach?
I started, let's see, this was pretty soon, pretty early COVID era. So I think it was right at the tail end of April going into May.
Okay. So 4 months almost.
Yep. It's been a minute. Yep.
And so the reason this episode is happening is because Tyler messaged me and he said, I loved your episode. So actually, I think we need to take like, this is
So
going to be
many
a lot of
steps
steps
back.
back before we get into this.
Yeah. We're
Um,
telling a story in reverse, and I apologize to the audience for
is there a better way to do this, Tyler?
it. Okay. Well, okay. So,
Maybe I'll let you just talk. Just
yeah.
talk for a minute.
Okay. Very well. So, what we're attempting to do here is just sort of frame a conversation that George and I were having. Um, and I had messaged him because he had asked for feedback about,
You
uh,
have to talk about the CEO thing first.
okay.
That's the thing that's where I was about to go, right? Like, isn't that
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
okay? Go for it.
Trust
I
the
won't interrupt
process.
you.
Trust the process.
I'll trust
So
you.
he'd asked me for feedback on an episode. It was an episode, right? On an episode that he had done, and I wanted to give it to him, and I was sort of talking a little bit about how he was talking about himself in a very new way, and that was sort of reminiscent of a conversation that he and I had shared um, some time ago. And actually, you know what? The episode was talking about you stepping into being a CEO, right, for Share Practices, and you were sort of crediting a conversation that we'd had some months ago for that transformation. And I was commending you on that. And in sort of an effort to step into my own role, I decided that I was really sick because when you talked about that, you said, "Oh, Tyler, he's one of our interns," and I noticed that that actually bothered me in a way that it's never really bothered me before.
Love
And I
it.
kind of talked about it, and I said, I don't want to be thought of as an intern. I'm stepping into some new roles here with Share Praxis. I'm stepping into new roles in my own life, and I think the term intern is very limiting. I'm trying to step into something greater, something with a deeper meaning than just an intern. Aaron can be an intern. I'm not an intern. So, sorry, I had to. And so, actually, George immediately called me, which is really something special nowadays because even when I want him to call me, I can't get him to call me. So, him calling me spontaneously was a big deal. And I
I
was
think
on
we
the
need
elliptical
to.
at the time.
I think I was on a 3 message in a row not responding streak before that. Was that the
Yeah.
3 message in a row not responding
Yeah,
streak that I
yeah,
broke?
we were in the middle of that, and
Yes.
generally I can get a very dismissive thumbs up from you, and I wasn't even getting that. That's how I knew it was a productive week. But yeah, so you called me. I hop off the elliptical. I go out in the parking lot, and we're having this conversation, and we kind of he wanted to talk to me about me sort of trying to assert myself as something more than an intern, which I think he recognizes just very out of pattern for me, because we can talk about why that's out of pattern, but he wanted to kind of talk because he realized that I was coming to a junction in my own journey with life coaching that he had. We were sort of recapitulating that, and I was getting to experience it. And he was sort of seeing me doing that, and so he really wanted to kind of share that moment with me. And so that's how we knew we had to have this conversation. So I think people are more or less up to speed at this point.
Yeah, and I think so. I still want to go back to the CEO conversation because I think we
Okay,
need to have that
fair
one
enough.
on air.
Fair enough.
But we'll get to that later. I think for me, on being on the receiving end of that, as somebody that's known you and communicated with you every day almost for 3 years, that message was different.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that, I haven't, so it's funny because it's like when you work out for a while, you'll notice it first.
Yeah.
And then in the future, other people will notice it. And
Sure.
it's like for you and your experience with a life coach and working on yourself and the leadership development and everything that's come from it, like now you're a coach, you coach students
Right.
and you do that whole thing. And it's like I saw that. But for you to, for you to just like straight up call me out and just be like, I don't like that name. Like,
Right.
give me a new name.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
That was oh man, like the pride I had for you in that moment. Yeah, picked up the call. I was on the beach and I picked up the call and I called you and I was like, dude, hell yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't use those exact words,
It's a
but I
big deal.
said, hell yeah, man, like that's awesome. And that was the moment that I really saw you starting to step into what Matt and I have, and Richard, but like really Matt and I have been talking about and seeing in you for a really long
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
And so Tyler has a new role here at Shared Praxis, and he's the director. And for a little bit about our company structure. So I don't, and this is one of those things that I record things that are future based on air, and then I'll end up being wrong.
Yes.
But I don't see us having another partner at Shared Practice.
Mhm.
I think Richard, Matt, and I are very nice dynamic. I think we really like that. But we have really key positions that we are offering to very select people to have when we grow, and director positions. They're director of a new department. And so Alex Sharp is somebody in mind, right? Mastermind.
Of course.
Suzanne Rassi is coaching. Those are like really high level positions at shared practices. And Tyler Tolbert is a director of shared practices in our mystery department. So that's the thing I love about this. It's like the biggest cliffhanger ever.
It's a
Uh,
tease.
it is a huge tease
Yeah.
because we're actually we're planting a seed. I'll
Hmm.
call it planting a seed in an area that we want to be very involved in the future. But it's a very long process to get started. And so we can't talk about it because we've signed non disclosures that say we can't talk about this. So we can't talk about it. But one day in a couple years, you will hear about it. And for the
Mark
next two
our
years,
words.
Tyler Tolbert will be the director of the mystery department.
That's right.
And he'll be working very hard on the back end. And this is so Tyler, I want to ask you, when you first heard about the mystery department, uh,
Hmm.
initial reaction.
I was absolutely baffled. I found out about it a bit
Uh,
serendipitously. I won't go too much into
yeah,
that,
well,
but
we won't. Yeah, he
I
wasn't supposed to
wasn't
find out
I
yet. Yeah, we
wasn't supposed to know, and I think that you guys expected a little bit more decorum of me in finding it out and knowing that I probably wasn't supposed to be privy to that information. But of course, I aired it out immediately and said, "Hey, what the hell is going on? What does this mean?" And um, and then you guys kind of went into it, and I thought, "Man, what are they smoking?" Because I know they're in different cities right now, so they can't be together, but they're doing something simultaneously. And I want in, but no, it took me a while to really take it seriously and drink it in. It was just sort of what really sounded like a pipe dream, but you guys had so much intention behind it, and you already had taken some tangible steps forward. And as I've seen those things fall into play, I'm just seeing a movie kind of unfold before my eyes, and I'm just so excited to talk more candidly about what's going on. Like I don't really like being a tease, but that's just sort of the nature of things. I just want people to be aware that there are big things going on and kind of prepare themselves because I was very unprepared when I saw it, and I was a bit dismissive at first.
Yeah, so it's funny. Our kind of my side of it is so I put down multi practice ownership, and
Yeah,
Richard and I talk about that on air. That whole process for me, and I didn't know what I wanted um, from I guess my life. All I knew was that it wasn't multi practice ownership, and I wanted to be shared practices full time.
yeah,
But I didn't really know what that entailed, and we just knew that I just knew that I wanted my whole career to be this passion that I have with people in my life that I'm closest with. And and then Matt and I are in New York, and then this idea comes up,
hmm
and we call Richard on the side of the freeway, and he's like, no," and and then it took me about an hour, and I think I got him on board, and then it was Matt, Richard, and I just like really preparing to do this thing that's just massively huge.
right.
And I think for us the vision of shared practices has changed so much, but I think when I made the shift to this not being my side thing, this is my main thing that I'm doing for my whole career. That's really, I think, the okay, well then we have to change the scale.
Yeah, and you needed something wildly ambitious to,
We needed something big enough to entertain us for our whole careers.
and it's big.
And so, yeah, so I think that's about what I'll leave you guys with.
Yeah.
And it's something that in a couple of years you'll find out. And if you notice, a lot of our stuff we're saying like we got big things coming. We keep saying that, and like we have an online academy coming at the beginning of 2021. We have in-person seminars next year. We have our coaching, our mastermind. That's not what we're talking about. That's
Also
like
big things.
all of those are cool, but like we can say those things on air. We haven't signed any non-disclosures prohibiting us from talking
Right.
about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think there's a much bigger thing that we're trying to accomplish over a
Right.
much longer period of time that we feel very passionately about, and that's where we have Tyler moving forward. So the director of the mystery department is the best you're
Yeah.
going to get on air,
Yes.
and it's something that I mean, when you find out, it'll be so cool. I can't wait. I
I
can't.
know.
I mean, Matt and I hate the fact that we can't talk about it.
It's a very
And at
difficult
the
thing to do.
earliest convenience, we will. I promise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to rein this in just a little bit because I feel like we're getting a little bit too excited about the thing that we're always excited about. And it's just kind of sounding like a bunch of nonsense. So for the sake of saving this episode, I want to kind of step back and talk about, now that you've sort of explained the significance of the name change, I want to explain the significance of it for myself
Good.
and what sort of transformation that really represented because you know the whole point of this whole conversation, us doing this on air, is not to talk about our own lives, our own careers, our own transformations. It's, I mean, sure, we are, but that's an allegory for the transformations that we want to see in the people that are listening to these episodes. They want to see changes in their lives, right? And the only way we really know how to tell that is through our own stories, and that's really what we're attempting to do.
And the purpose of this, in my mind, is you have dentists, and sometimes they're so caught in what's going on day to day,
Yes.
and they think that the key to their practice or the key to their development as a pre-owner or as a student, as whatever, is tangible. Like,
Yeah.
what front office system do we use? How do we verify insurance? All that like basic
Right.
stuff, how to's. And then
Somehow.
maybe they're thinking what to do. But it's the leadership development that makes the biggest difference. And our goal is to paint the picture of how this has impacted our lives so much so that
Yeah.
hopefully you can get bought into the thing that we believe wholeheartedly, that leadership development is one of the most important skills and assets to really work on your mindset, the way you look at everything, that change the lens on your glasses that you see the world through. Like, that is huge. And I think
Sure.
it's something that's really hard to explain. And so that's why we try to explain it over and over again in different ways. And I think
Yeah.
Tyler's experience is just one other way that we can try to get
Right.
you to really realize how big of a deal this is.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in the how to's that you even confuse leadership as a how to and personal growth as a how to. And you listen to episodes about mindset and vision and about these people that, really talk about how they operate throughout their days. And you're just sort of taking notes as if you're learning about front office systems or, how to, edge prime and bond something. And I did that. Like, I consumed a whole lot of self-help material early on and like mindset type stuff. But as we were talking about on the phone, like when you're actually going through these things and actually going through those steps and changing and seeing yourself changing and feeling that, and other people in your life are seeing that and noticing, you kind of recapitulate all those things. You go back through them, and it's just with an entirely new lens, and you realize how powerful they are. Because so many of these things fall victim to cliche. They just you dismiss them because you're like, I've heard that before. That's information I already knew. And if you're teaching me something about implants I've already heard before, I'm not going to pay attention to you because I'm like, I already know that. But this mindset stuff, I'm hearing it again, and it just resonates with me so very differently, because I'm actually going through some of those changes. So anyway, so to talk about the sort of change of title, the reason that I have been perfectly complacent with being an intern is mostly because I have entrusted you and Matt and Richard and the other people that we associate with to sort of define what I am based off the work that I perform. And I sort of let that sort of external evaluation of my value and what I am sort of define me. And I'm starting to realize that I can define myself and project that and then help other people to understand it. And it's completely shifting that sort of dynamic to sort of be able to step into something myself, and then other people will then fall into it and understand that themselves, instead of trying to do everything in reverse, because I'm always just sort of waiting for people to give me some new designation. And that's kind of what it was about, was saying, you know what, I'm not an intern anymore, you should know this, right? So
Yeah.
stop calling me that, right? And I think that was an assertion that you've never heard from me before. And I can guarantee that I've never really done that with someone that I see as a authority figure and a mentor, or what have you.
And I loved, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I didn't call you and say, like, don't talk to me like that. I was like,
Who the
yes,
hell do you
I
think you
love
are?
this,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I think it's, again, I want to use that analogy of like the glasses you see the world through. Like, that's what we're trying to change. And it's like the most vague, difficult thing to communicate on air. It's like, hey, you're driving in a car on your way to work, and I'm trying
Yeah.
to change the glasses in which you see the world through.
Yeah.
But that's the most powerful level of change, because it's the most permanent, and it's one that impacts literally every part of your life, every decision you make,
Right.
including running your business.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between the who, right? We're talking about the who, what, how hierarchy. The who is what we're trying to change. And
Right.
Tyler, like, he's looked at intern every day. He puts on his glasses, he stares at intern, he's like, yes. And then one day his glasses change, and the word hadn't changed, nothing changed other than the glasses he wears. And he called me, and he messaged me, and he said, I'm not having it. Like, you know, give me a new name.
Right.
Like, that's one example. But like, I think the other one is, there's an expression that we talked about over the phone that I say a lot, was what got me here, you know, isn't going to keep me here, or it's not what I like. It got me here. You thank it, and then you kind of put it
Right.
down. So I
Right.
want you to talk about your relationship with that expression that I kind of always said that you kind of rolled your eyes at,
Yeah.
and and then I guess how it might relate to your life right now.
Right. So I remember you telling me about that on one of my first trips to Phoenix, and you were driving around. I think you picked me up at the airport, reluctantly, might I add. And you were talking about some of your adventures with life coaching, and you said the phrase, "What got me here isn't going to get me where I want to go," or I forget how you phrased it. I think you just tried to phrase it and screwed it up. How'd
I
you say
think I screwed up my own expression too. I mean, it was just this,
it?
what got me here isn't going to keep me here. I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
And so you
Yeah.
thank it for getting you here, and then you
Right.
you put it down and you pick up the new thing that's going to get you to where you want to go. It's kind of the
Right.
gist of it.
Exactly. So you understand, who you are and how who you are and the way you behave and show up in the world has gotten you to the position that you are, but you realize that you have goals and you want to get to those goals, and you have to understand that certain aspects of what got you to where you are not actually going to take you to that place. And it's not about rejecting them or hating them or anything like that. It's about growing some appreciation for them helping you get there, but understanding that you need a pivot and you need a new lens to get you to where you want to be. And for me, I've always seen myself as an intern, right? Like when I first got involved with shared practices, it was just like, hey, I just want to learn. Like I don't want any pay, anything I can help you with. Just let me know. I'm just trying to absorb by diffusion. Like whatever like thing you want to delegate to me, just do it, and I'll do it happily, ASAP, whatever. And eventually, maybe I'll earn some sort of place, and I'll just gain all this knowledge. And to me, I was just sort of studying all the time. And every time I would be given sort of a new task or a new job with share practices, or just like a new entitlement, all the way up to being a podcast host, it was just like, I'm just going to put in the work, and I'm just going to wait until you guys acknowledge me as something greater. And that's just sort of like, that's kind of how I progressed through dental school. It's how you progress through so much in life, and never really wanting to give myself credit, never wanting to assign any degree of greatness to myself, always trying to, what is it? uh, underestimate myself and feel that others are overestimating me. It's just kind of how I have operated through life. Like I don't take compliments. I don't appreciate it when people tell me that I'm something great, because I don't really believe that. I'm just trying to do as much as I can, and eventually maybe I'll earn some sort of title. And just sort of waiting on things to happen that way. It's helped me get to where I am, sure, but I have to understand that I do have
I
goals
want
that,
you to elaborate on that. I don't want you to sure it, because our audience is viewing it as like this wrong way of living right now. They're like
yeah,
looking at it like that's wrong, but it's not. Right? Think.
it's
I want
fine.
you to like really elaborate on all of the benefits. Like you're not
Yeah.
interning for us for 3 years without it.
Right, exactly. Like I would not be here if I didn't behave that way. If I didn't have this very ascetic, self-flagellating way of carrying through life, never thinking that I'm good enough. That's what drove me so much. It's what gave me power, because I just never thought it was enough, and I was always trying to do something better. I was always sort of a perfectionist. It was sort of a type A type thing. I've had the same attitude in the gym. I have the same attitude at school. And that's just how I've driven myself all the way up to this point. Like, I mean, probably sometime around like adolescence up to where I am. And I've
So
just
this
thought that,
sure all of your accomplishments to date can probably be attributed to
absolutely,
that.
absolutely. And I don't know that if I were given another chance, I could have done it without that.
You
To
couldn't.
get to this
Yeah.
point. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, so really, I still have to be very appreciative of that. And with my work with my life coach, I was thinking we were getting to this point where I was just sort of identifying this beast and then just trying to bury it and then just move on without it. But that's actually something that was revealed to me fairly recently, is that I should really acknowledge it for what it's done in my life, and where it's gotten me. And I have to be appreciative of that and not hate myself or have any sort of negative feelings about how I've treated myself up to this point. But I still have to be able to recontextualize that moving forward. And that's been quite a process that I never could have produced on my own. No way.
And this is for me is the inadequacy that I talk about, right? Like the I'm not good enough picking thing that I have going on. You
Always.
know, and for me it's like that's the motor. You don't get to this spot without this insane amount of energy to learn and do like
Yeah.
thousands of hours of learning for really no reason. You're like there's
Right.
something behind that that has to keep fuel in that engine to keep it moving. And for me it was the belief that I'm not good enough, and that
Yeah.
this was my way of being good enough. And at some point you have to put that down.
Hmm.
And for you, I'm so like, I could just, it's, you just are so different now. It's just
Hmm.
so hard to describe. It's not that you are a different person. You have the same qualities. You laugh at the same things. You just are grown. It's
Right.
just hard to describe. But you
Yeah.
can just tell that you've leveled up. It's very
Right.
obvious.
And there was this assumption that I hadn't leveled up until someone of authority or someone whose opinion I trusted told me that I had, and that I just had to work until that happened. Um, and I'm having to put that down, and it feels incredible to put that down. It's so empowering, and it's giving me a new sense of ownership, to coin a phrase, the pursuit of ownership. It's giving me a new sense of that. It's giving me a newfound agency in my own pursuit of ownership, not just of a practice or whatever, but my life and how I move through it and how I show up to people, and allowing myself to give myself that and not expect others to do it, is an incredibly powerful thing. And I think if I had read that in a book, or if I had even just listened to an episode just like this, I would have just heard it and it would have gone one ear and out the other, and it just wouldn't have mattered the way
Yeah.
that it should have mattered. And I don't know what it is, what combination of words we have to say on record here to get our audience to make that click. It is definitely a process. It's probably not just something you can read through. Um, but I just want people to really take pause and evaluate whether or not they're able to step into something like that, and appreciate what got them to where they are, and what's actually might be necessary for them to get where they want to be, and how those two things might not be the same.
Well, I mean, this is 16 calls of one-on-one coaching later.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't a book later. This isn't a, like, one-on-one coaching is the quickest way to
Hmm.
get any type of growth, because you're just getting like identified. Like,
Yeah.
that's such, like, you're just getting called. I want to talk about your perception of life coaching. I
Okay.
didn't have
Oh,
like
that's
this.
good.
I didn't have this quacky perception of life coaching that everyone else has. Like, I never
Yeah.
had that. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like, I get divorced. Actually, it was funny. I moved out on a Friday into my new place. Ex-wife and I split,
Hmm.
and Monday morning was my discovery call. And it was
You were
that
so
fast. It,
primed.
it was booked in advance. It just happened to turn out that way. That is like, it was the perfect time in my life to really, and I never had this
Yeah.
like, oh, life coaching is quacky. But I think that's the perception in the industry, is that life coaching is kind of like this like fake thing. Did you have that?
Yeah, and I think, George, that you are more the exception than the rule. Seriously.
I live
Um,
under a rock, so that would make sense.
yeah, and that is sort of your role, is that you're always the exception, right? So I think that, probably my skepticism surrounding life coaching and paying people for soft skills, was very skeptic. I mean, it was cynical, and I think that's something that's maybe even endemic in dentistry, or at least our type of people, who are very type A, and just, I don't know, inherently suspicious. Like, we can be kind of cheap about things. It's funny what we're willing to spend money on or invest in our time or energy into. And usually it's things that are like books. It's something tangible, something I can read or study, or, that's the hammer we all have. And then, we have these nails, and then we like figure out our hammers. But yeah, I mean, I was very straight up with my life coach, and I told him, pretty upfront. I said, look, I have nothing against you personally. But I have very little belief that, um, what you're asking for is something that I can even reasonably afford, and B, can even reasonably value. Like, it's kind of insane to even possibly be having this conversation about going into this year-long contract with you, where, I mean, if I may, I'm investing quite a lot of resources, right? Like, for where I
Yeah,
am as a
we don't
student,
have to
it's a
say
lot.
how much, but like,
I'm not
for a
going to,
dental
but it was
student,
a
it's
lot. It
insane.
was
Yeah,
honestly, I mean, it was more than I had earned up to that point in my life. I'll
yeah.
just say that. I'll just say that. And it was crazy. And I was just trying to navigate this conversation to where I could just maybe look like a terrible candidate for it. And they just be like, okay, whatever, no problem, no hard feelings. But it didn't happen. And as we're going through that conversation, they were able to identify why it was perfect for me. It was me being so reticent about it. It was me being so intransigent about engaging in this kind of thing that actually made it perfect for me. And that was just such a leap to make. And I have my discovery call, and that discovery call is sort of turned into like a sort of free trial call in a way. Like, we
Mhm.
just sort of simulated a coaching call. And I went away from it, and I was like, and I just, like, I was so emotionally vapid. I mean, just drained from it. I mean, it was really such a roller coaster for me. Um, and I'm not someone that's a particularly emotional person. And within 1 hour, I had just been completely exhausted, mentally and even physically. I mean, just the whole day, just a very different feeling carrying through it. And, I had to talk to some people that I trusted. I talked to my fiance, of course, about it. And I wanted her so terribly to just bring me back to earth, make me feel comfortable again, and say, yeah, this is crazy. Don't do this. This is a huge mistake. And she was but she was open minded though, and which made me mad. And she was like, well, tell me about what happened on the call. And I was like, well, this, and that. We talked about this, and that. And, this happened. And I got really uncomfortable and I got angry at one point. And then I was like really sad at one point, but then I was really happy. It was like all this stuff. And, and I kind of gave her the bullet points of like what we had discovered by the end of the call. And she was like, Tyler, like I have been struggling so much for years to articulate to you what you just learned in like the last hour. She was like, I don't care what it costs. I'll pay for it. Like it doesn't, like, don't forget the money. Like you're just doing that because you don't want to do this.
Yes.
Like you're making it seem like it's a financial thing. And it's not. Like that's just a wall you're putting up. And I was just so disarmed by that. And it was just such an unexpected reaction to it. And I just, eventually I had to take a leap. I had to say, you know what, like, the fiance just signed off on this. She's a hell of a lot less crazy than me. So let's see what happens. And over time, that skepticism just kept sort of fading away because I realized that no book I'd ever read, no podcast I've ever listened to had ever made me feel that way or given me such a fresh look on life within, an hour phone call. And it's certainly not just hour long phone calls either, right? Like it's a journey that you're having to go through every single day. Like you're
and
thinking
it's
about it
between
every day.
calls. It's the between calls when you're thinking about the calls. Yeah.
It's like I liken it to training my dog. Like when I went to go train my dog at PetSmart. No, seriously, I'm not a dog.
I'm interested. I'm enjoying this analogy. Keep going.
Give me a second. So when you go to train a dog and you pay this monthly fee or whatever, you go to PetSmart. It's like 1 hour, and they always say this all the time. And I actually laugh about it because they said in South Park one time because they were making fun of the dog whisperer. He says,
Yeah.
I don't train dogs. I train people. Right. And what that
I
means
train people
is
to train dogs.
right. Exactly. Like that's what they do. Like it's like a 1 hour session. They walk you through how to train your dog, and then you go home and you work on it. It's the same thing with physical therapy. You go into physical therapy for like an hour. They give you some exercises, and then you go home, and then you do the work at home every single day, and that's how you get results. Right.
Got it.
Life coaching is exactly the same way. And that once that clicked with me, I was like, holy shit, like I am really investing in something much, much bigger than just 1 hour phone conversations. And God, and then before I knew it, I'm telling someone else that they need to do it too. And I'm like selling them on it, but not like trying to sell them. Like I'm trying to be relatable. I'm like, look, dude, like I know that as you're listening to what I'm saying, you think I'm full of it because that's exactly what I'd be thinking if someone else was telling me the same thing.
Mhm.
Just get on a discovery call and you'll figure it out yourself. Like I'm going to let you figure that out yourself. I'm not going to try and like oversell this. Just do that and don't be afraid of it.
And this is really like, Matt and his wife Ellen, like their influence on entire company, right? Like Matt's certified life coach. And we have, Alex Sharp, and I are both doing a program together, a leadership development program. And this is like what we believe in wholeheartedly is development of leadership.
Right.
And your ability changing the glasses on the leader. And so like I want to paint to a dentist, like this is the part that drives me nuts. So if we look at like the cost of a year-long commitment of coaching or something like that, they look at the cost and like, oh my gosh, that's insane. But realistically, the only reason they're really concerned about it is because they're afraid of getting ripped off. And they're afraid of like, wow, I paid for these phone calls and now like I'm like, so the reason you're not doing something that's potentially great for you and your practice isn't because of any logical reason. It's the glasses you're wearing where you're looking at it and you're afraid of being ripped off. Right. So the way you're looking at this is fear of getting ripped off.
Yeah.
And you'll go spend, like 40 grand between implant course, plane tickets, hotel, implant equipment, implants for a procedure that you might add $5,000 a month to your practice.
Yeah.
Like best case scenario, I add $5,000 a month to my practice with implants and I'll spend 40 grand doing it. But this process of like investing, not that much money to like transform your life, your practice, everything is like this insane thing to them because they have like this fear, like dentists are very comfortable with. And the point I'm making isn't um, do coaching, not add implants. The point I'm making is for something of like a one thing that can transform your practice versus another thing where you add like a minor amount of revenue by adding a procedure. Dentists
Yeah.
are so much more comfortable with the adding procedure thing
Hmm.
because it's within their wheelhouse. The glasses they wear
Yeah.
looks at that as like a very straightforward thing.
Yeah.
But putting down that set of glasses and picking up a new one where you can see your entire picture and you can see the quality of your life and your income and everything that's possible, all of a sudden you can see a lot more value in something that like life coaching looks really kind of, potentially like a waste of money. And so like that, imagine approaching every decision in your practice with that new set of glasses,
Hmm.
that new mindset, that new ability to identify your fear and say, hey, you know what, with this thing, I'm afraid of being ripped off.
Hmm.
I like acknowledge that fear and I'm just going to like do it anyway. And
Yeah.
like, if I get ripped off, that sucks. But, it's funny that like, I think so often we don't do something that could be transformational for us because we're afraid of getting ripped off.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, and I'm glad that you make the analogy to CE because like I myself am kind of a CE junkie, right? Even at
Yes.
this stage in my career, and like it's very easy for me to spend somewhat of an exorbitant amount of money on CE because like I know the value proposition. I know that I give you this money, we're going to do this thing. I'm going to learn that thing, and then it's going to have a some projected ROI over the extent of my career. And I'm like, yeah, that's worth doing, and I'm excited about it, whatever. And I perceive whatever that costs as being valuable because I know what the tangible returns on investment are. And you can't really give that sort of proposition for life coaching because what comes out of it is totally unfathomable and ultimately up to you. And it's like, is it guaranteed? No, but it's not guaranteed because what could come out of it is just like entirely a matter of your own creation and a creation that you have with your coach, and they inspire you to do these things that you actually really want to do, and you're just so scared of being swindled. And because you just don't have these like tangible promises of like you're going to make X amount of money month over month and eventually this course will pay for itself, you just don't feel so comfortable doing it. And being the person that was that sort of CE junkie, always going for it, while also being the sort of person that was not willing to invest in coaching and myself, like I look back on that now and I wish I could be talking to this person. I wish I could be talking to myself about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, even trying to explain what the fallacy was there and what could actually be behind it. And I think I could be in a very different place right now if I could do that.
Well, and I think like let's make it tangible for our audience, right? Our audience is either dental students, pre-owners, or ownership dentists, right? And they can get behind the idea of investing on CE, right? And I'm not saying don't do that, like by all means,
Of course.
but it's like for me, I view CE the same way I view like pretty much adding a procedure to your practice. I guess I view them in the same light. It's like minimal growth. It's like 10% growth at best.
There's a ceiling.
Yeah, it's like if I just kill it and I just do this procedure super well, my practice will grow like 10% because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 20 tops. Like I've never seen anybody, even Josh Gordon, is that his name? Philip Gordon, the implant guy.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
His like plaque, like right, super implant guy. I think one time we had him on air and he said like his practice is 30% implants. And it's like
Right.
the guy who does more implants than anybody else. And like he's like implant guy, implant podcast, implant person, implants, 30% of their practice. Like I've never gotten behind that idea that like you can grow your practice through adding procedures. It's like the most inefficient, expensive way to grow possibly grow. And, so it's like, if I'm listening to this, like Tyler, if you had to put a monetary value on the set of glasses you now have that you see everything through for the rest of your life, put a dollar amount on it.
Every dollar I have. I mean, I don't know what
No,
number.
like project for 20 years.
For 20 years.
Let's just say you stopped life coaching right now.
Okay.
Right? Whatever you paid for the last 4 months. For the rest of your life, how much of net worth did that add to your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I track it against what I was on pace to do,
on pace to do
I'm
versus your
now,
current pace now, yes,
that I can't totally talk about. Over 20 years,
millions of dollars, right? We're in the millions.
It's like $10 million probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I hate.
No, that's so for me. I look at it,
like that, but yeah.
and it's like I look at it from a perspective of like if we have a pre-owner coaching client or if we have an owner coaching client, changing the glasses you wear, the mindset you have for
Yeah.
like a period of time that's your 20 years, 30-year career, the value proposition on that is insane. It's
Yeah.
like 100 to 1 on your money at least. It's insane. Like that's the thing I can't understand is like we had James on a follow up for Practice Underwater, and I love this. This was like mindset in a T. He had um we had him on the first time Practice Underwater, and if you listen to him, he was like, I don't want to have my associate work evenings because I'm working evenings. And in the course of like 8 months, his income doubled. He works less, and then you heard him talk, and he said this statement that just stuck out to me. He went, next associate definitely working Fridays, like for sure working Fridays, as in for the rest of my career I now have the comfort, the lens on my glasses where I can ask an associate to work Fridays without thinking twice about it, without feeling the
Right.
guilt, without all of the things holding him back on the lenses that he looked at the situation through.
Yeah.
So, he's now going to make more money for his whole career. Like the value proposition, that's like, 200 or 300 grand a year plus lifestyle benefits for 20 years.
Yeah.
Like I can't find me the CE course that can do that.
It
You
does
know what
that.
I mean? Work less, make twice as much, and be much happier. Like
Yeah.
find that CE course. That's the thing I can't like. And then we have the pre-owner coaching where you bought the right practice. Like we had people who in our pre-owner coaching, they had like a solo practice in mind, and then they end up shifting gears and buying a group practice
Sure.
because their vision changed. And it's like, I want the glasses that we gave that person, like for the next 30 years. I want to like, put a dollar value on those. And it's insane, because
Yeah.
this is like, Tyler, could you ever see yourself going back to the way you were before life coaching?
No way in hell. Like I don't know what
You don't even know how to.
no.
It's like permanent change to the way you look at everything.
Yeah. If I did go back to the way things were, I'd be miserable with it
Yes,
for sure because I would know then what I'm missing out on.
exactly. And I feel like people who listen to our show, they think that like we're in, like they hear us talk and they're like, wow, these guys are totally full of it or something. Because like they talk about things that are not possible. It's not possible with your glasses.
Yeah.
With ours, they are, because we see things differently. And that's to me like the whole shtick I have. And that's why I wanted Tyler on, because and he, we had to talk about this because we both, for me it's been a year. For Tyler, it's been 4 months. But, I mean, Tyler, have you noticed the change in me in the past year?
Certainly in the past year, I would say it's definitely ramped up in the past couple months to where you've had as much change in the past couple months as you did, the year prior to that, but certainly within the past year since you started.
What
Different.
happened a couple months ago?
There was a phone call that happened in a parking lot
Yes.
while I was trying to go to the gym.
Right.
No,
So this is a perfect example of how it
yeah,
impacted my life.
right.
Tyler delivered a new set of glasses for me,
Hmm.
and that changed my life.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I got to be your coach
you got to be my coach for a minute.
one
Yeah,
call, and I'll send you an invoice.
you should. It's millions of dollars. Like the
Oh,
value of that conversation is millions of dollars. I can't see the world the same way after that phone call.
yeah.
How long did it take you to convince me of that point?
It was a 2-hour phone call. And I had called you for a concern that I'd had about coaching. And I was, just expecting you to shoot me a message back, kind of assuage my concerns or whatever. And then that would be it. Then you ended up calling me just to sort of reassure me about some things. And, it was hitting about minute 10 and I figured it was kind of closing out. And then, at some point you tried to encourage me about something or, try to, give me something to make me feel a little bit better or whatever. And so then I, to reciprocate that, I kind of turned it on you and wanted to kind of commend you for some changes that you've made in your life. And, this is something you get in the habit of doing with coaching because like always you try and tie things up and like do, you have to sort of acknowledge yourself for greatness. And then, always what you want to do is like acknowledge greatness in another person. And I was trying to do that for you. And I think that something about it didn't click for you. And I really, once I identified that, I had to kind of pounce on it because I was like, are you serious? Like, how could you possibly believe that? And I just felt like maybe you were sort of just doing this sort of pasted on modesty and humility. And then I realized that you actually believed what you were saying. And I just felt like anyone else in our troop that would hear that would think you absolutely crazy. So I felt like I really needed to just sort of, have you wake up and smell the coffee and, um, you know,
And this is Tyler trying to convince me that I'm the leader of our company.
right. That's essentially what it was. That's what
Yeah.
it was. And he was sort of saying that, I'm telling him he's the guy, basically. And he's like, no, I'm not the guy. He saw himself the same way that I used to see myself, like as an intern in a way.
I viewed myself as Richard's little brother, is the analogy I always use.
That's right. That's right. And you didn't just see that on a personal level. You saw it professionally in that way
Yeah.
too. You weren't really allowing yourself to say, you know what, I'm the face of shared practices and what I did and my method is our philosophy. And I was trying to encourage you to understand that that was not that wasn't like a crazy statement to make. Like that was just a matter of fact thing. And it was really a reflection of how everyone else already perceives it. It was something that had happened quite naturally, and you were refusing to acknowledge that. And then the following 2 hours of your denial and my really doubling down on that really changed something in you.
It
And
also took about 5 more phone calls, by the way.
it did. And with other people, you had to go
Yes,
call other
I had
people.
to confirm that with other people. I was
Because you
not
were sure that
believing
I
it.
was being a charlatan
Yeah.
somehow.
No, and I mean, I had laughed out. I had people laughing out loud at me
Yeah.
on the phone.
Yeah. Exactly.
I thought Matt's was the funniest. I called him and I was like, yeah, Tyler and I had this conversation last night. And I know this is going to sound weird, but like he kind of said that, I'm the face of our company. And I tried explaining to him that I'm just one of the guys. And he started laughing, goes, you are the guy, dude. You're not one of the
You're
guys.
the guy.
You're the
Yeah.
guy. And like,
Yeah.
it was just so flippant and it's so Matt. And
Yeah.
then that was he was the second person I called. He was the first person I called after our talk. But like for me, it's ever since that, I
Right.
can't see it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, there's stuff in your life, if you're listening, that you are not owning about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's preventing you from seeing the world in a specific way. And like we're talking about the dentist not wanting to get ripped off, right? Maybe you have trust issues and that's holding you back from taking a leap of faith in something that you want because of the fear of failure. Or if it's, if it's a practice opportunity, you're afraid of the risk. You're afraid of, there's something that you're afraid of or something you're not doing and you're not living your best life because of it. And for me, it was leading this company the way that I know how, not the way that I was doing it.
Right.
And it took me getting into an uncomfortable zone of leading my friends, which is a level of leadership that's really unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of cases, people that are older than me.
Yeah. And I wish I could pull up the text that I got from my life coach one time that it resonates with me so much. And I'm going to butcher it, but basically all they told me was that, you can keep on operating the way that you've been operating. We can still be friends and, we can, there's not going to be any hard feelings, but I'm telling you right now that you're playing small games.
Yes.
That was the phrase. It was small games. And for a moment, I thought that was insulting, but it wasn't. It was saying you could be doing a whole lot more, but because you are so committed to how you've been up to this point, you're not allowing yourself to play the bigger game that's at play here. And you're just delaying something that could be so much greater. And I promise you that if you're listening to this right now, you're playing small games somewhere and something that's very important to you. And having that new lens allows you to see what the bigger game at play is. And you want to get on that as soon as possible because once you start doing it, you're going to regret that you didn't do it sooner. And that's really what it boils down to for me.
And I think from our company's perspective, right? Like the reason why we're so big on mastermind in all levels, right? Like, you guys haven't heard yet, but student and pre-owner masterminds are coming up. Student masterminds, pre-owner masterminds at the beginning of next year, 2021. It's because your mindset in those areas of like at each development point of your life is super crucial to the next step. I mean, and it's our goal to, on a large scale, change the set of glasses that dentists see the world through, and that's in all ways, like the highest commitment that we have as a company is being different and doing something that nobody else has done. And what you guys actually need. And a lot of you need a new set of glasses because yes, it's gotten you somewhere, but what's possible in your life is so much bigger than you might think. And it's not as hard as you think. It's just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And Tyler, do you get when I say that a lot where I'm like, it's not hard. It's just uncomfortable. Like I always say, like stuff's easy. It's just uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a really important distinction from, the person that delves into the typical sort of self-help material like books and podcasts and such is you're going to take whatever that is. Like you're being given a set of tools to apply, but you're applying it. You have to ultimately apply it yourself, and you're always protecting yourself from uncomfortable
Yeah, you're
conversation.
always staying in the comfort zone, and the
Always. I don't
comfort
care if
zone
it's
is no growth.
yeah, absolutely. And you need someone else to put you in that discomfort and make you sit in it and fight through it and not just push it
Yes.
aside like everyone will do. I don't care how strong you are. That's what you do. That's how
And
you
that's
go
my
through
favorite
life.
part about paying for coaching. It's
Yeah.
always uncomfortable. That's the whole point.
Always.
It's supposed to be
Always.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's supposed to challenge that, and it's supposed to push you.
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
like, oh man, yes, this is like so my area, and it
Yeah.
never was my area until you get hooked. Are you hooked now?
I'm hooked. From the first call, like I really got backed up into a corner on it, honestly.
Yeah,
And I felt uh, attacked in a way, but not really. Not that's the wrong word to use. But I was like, why is this happening to
exposed.
me? I got to get out of this. I'm exposed. How is this person sort of chipping away at me? Like all the sort of defenses that I typically have for people, saw right through it because they've seen it a million times. And all of a sudden, I was not anything special, and I was just a client at this point. I'm like, oh my god, like what's going to happen now? And but it was sitting in that discomfort, and like once I kind of turned a knob and said, I'm going to lean into the discomfort. And now whenever I'm trying to figure out what the next call is going to be about, because a lot of it's actually pretty self-directed.
Mm-hmm.
When when I'm trying to do that, I think to myself, what is making me most uncomfortable right now? Like what scares me? What keeps going through my mind? Like what are the intrusive thoughts that are like taking my energy away because I'm scared or I don't feel like I'm apt to handle something? Those are always like first on my list. Like I need to talk about that. We need to see where I can make progress there. So you learn to really lean into that discomfort instead of
Yes.
sheltering yourself from it. And that's why all the self help you're doing up to this point is not really living up to its full potential.
Yeah, who wants to do that without accountability? Let me just go do the most uncomfortable
Exactly.
things in my
Yeah.
life. Like go, like I'm afraid of heights. Let me go drive up to Sedona, jump off
Yeah.
a cliff without anyone else there. Like that's not
Yeah.
happening.
No one is geared to do that.
Yeah.
No one is geared to do that on their own. No way.
So now you've been on both sides of it. We both have, right? We've been on the receiving breakthroughs and we've been on the delivering breakthroughs.
Right.
What's the
Right.
experience like on the other side? On
Yeah.
helping someone. Like it's so cool when you're coaching someone where you can see it so clearly. You're like, I see the path for you so clearly, and you have
Yeah.
to like help them connect those dots. What's that like?
Yeah. It's like I mean, you just can't wait for it to happen. It's almost frustrating in a way. Like you want to be patient and understand that you were in the exact same spot, but you're also like, I want to shake you right now.
Yeah.
Because like I'm not a trained coach. Like I'm doing coaching and I'm getting better at it and I'm learning through these experiences, but like I'm not professionally trained. So maybe I don't have all the right tools to walk people through these things, but I've got the eye for it now. Like I can see when there's something someone needs to unlock and I don't always know how to really peck at it. But when it's there, I just get so excited for a person because I know that that's coming up for them. And it's just like, it's amazing. It really is. Like, it's so much more than a phone call. And it's just, it's hard to explain.
If you guys saw the look on his face when he's saying this, he's like, once I asked that question, he just like lit up.
Yeah. I'm
And
being,
it's
I am.
funny because we're now coach training, and so we teach these to our coaches. Like when like the big objections, the very common ones with dentists is like money, staff, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so what will start happening as the more you've worked somebody through a breakthrough, the more you'll see it, and then you'll see the path around it, and you'll get them
Mm-hmm.
to that spot. But that's, yeah, man, it's so cool because once you change their perspective on something, they never ever see it the same way again. And
Yeah.
I think people think like, what's holding you back from getting to where you want to go? Like if you and I were to switch places, whoever is listening right now,
Mm-hmm.
if you and I were to switch places and you with your mindset, and I'm not saying your mindset sucks. I'm just saying if your mindset's average, like, and you sit in my seat and I go sit in your seat, it wouldn't take a lot of time for us to switch spaces. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's all about what's going on between your ears. And I think that's the part that is really, really vague and really hard to wrap your mind around is that your success is so closely linked to the way you see the world. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is such a vague concept that is so, so hard to grasp.
Yeah. And it's a constant process. It's not a
Yeah.
box you can check off and be like, yeah, I did that. I read the top five. We
Yeah.
don't have to
No,
talk about mindset. I already covered that. We can talk about insurance credentialing right now.
that'd be like
Yeah.
going to the gym once and doing push ups, pull ups, running a mile, and then doing some squats, and then saying, "All right, I did cardio, I did my back, my chest, and
Yeah.
I did my legs. I'm
Yeah.
fit." Like,
Yeah.
no, it's a regular thing that you have to keep doing over and over and over again. And that's why all of these programs have regularity to them. There's a point to that because as you start getting out of shape, you go back to the gym to get back in shape. And
Mhm.
so yes, like this is I think the things that we believe more wholeheartedly than anything else, only because the impact it's had on our life is more
Yeah,
so than anything else.
for sure. And I'm kind of projecting from my past self here, because I just know there's other people like me. Understand that we're going to keep talking mindset
Yes.
forever, like indefinitely. It's going to keep coming up. We're going to keep talking about how it's working in our lives. We're going to keep reaching out to you for that. And even when you've gotten to sort of this comfortable point where you feel like your mindset is just dialed in and you're right, don't skip these episodes. Like,
Yeah.
know that this is a process and you still need to be engaging in it, because that's what I was doing for a while. And I was like, okay, if this isn't talking numbers or a system or something that I can apply when I'm in practice, I don't really care. Um, this stuff is still the most valuable thing that we can do.
Well, I think this is a great segue into OA 2.0. So,
Oh, for sure.
hey, audience, the Ownership Accelerator. It's coming up on its 3-year-old birthday.
Hmm.
It's almost as old as my son. Wow, I didn't realize that. Wait, is it really? Wait, no. Yes,
Yeah.
my child is older than the Ownership Accelerator. I can't imagine. In my memories of making the course, he's not there. Um,
Because you weren't there, George.
I mean, I'm like, what the hell? I thought it was something I made before I had kids. Anyway, so the Ownership Accelerator is something that I made as a fourth year dental student a very long time ago, and it's something that honestly, the amount of people that have taken that course and the amount of like I've almost heard no negative feedback from anybody taking that course. Like I think we got one email with somebody who was trying to help us out by giving us negative feedback, and the amount of stuff they pulled out of it, I was like actually proud that this was like the worst we'd ever heard, and I was like, this is
Yeah.
like great, like this is hardly anything negative. It's like I
Right.
would prefer it if this lecture had mentioned this. So I was like, cool, like this is
Solid
solid.
core.
I mean, for
Yeah.
how many? I think we have like 300 people have taken it now, and
Mm.
um, so anyway, that all being said, we're reworking the whole course
Yeah.
because mindset is totally left out.
It's
And
outdated.
that's how much we value that. And so, guess who's doing that? Not me.
And it was going to be you for a while.
It was going
It
to be me
was.
for a while. And I
Yeah.
think we like at Shared Practices kind of a innate philosophy that we have where we use the angst, like pre-owner to pre-owner angst. We really like to keep the angst in the pre-owner world.
Right.
And so anyway, Tyler is somebody that has, as he's grown and as he's watched me and I, like, me make mistakes and Matt make mistakes, he has such a great perspective of both ownership and pre-ownership and mindset. And we're recreating the Ownership Accelerator to be a mindset course, the way to think about pre-ownership with ownership in mind. Like looking at pre-ownership with an ownership lens. Like that is the objective of the new course.
Right.
And I'm so excited to redo Ownership Accelerator. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions about all that stuff. When it comes out, they'll be answered. Until then, please don't bombard my inbox.
We had
Um,
to lead off with a tease, and now we're ending it with a tease, aren't
it's
we?
not a tease. I very clearly stated what it is. I mean, the course is not developed yet. I mean, do you want to take a course that's not developed? No. So
Sure. Fair.
I like to foreshadow stuff. I think the audience likes to be in the loop of what's coming.
That's fair. That's fair.
Um, I mean, Tyler, as an audience member, would you like to be in the loop on what's coming, even if it's going to coming months from now?
Certainly.
Well, there you go. So we're going to stop recording and we're going to start working on ownership. We're going to continue working on Ownership Accelerator 2.0. We have a scheduled meeting. So I enjoyed this, Tyler. I don't know if the audience got as much out of this or not. It's hard to say. But it's these types of episodes that we need more of. Is you're driving to work. I would like to change. I would like to start the process of changing the way you think about everything. That's a reasonable task. Change the way you think about everything.
Yeah. Believe it or not, it's actually more reasonable than it sounds. I really
Yeah,
think so.
I think so too.
But yeah, George, I really hope that we've conveyed, value to our audience with this conversation. But, I think you get out of as much as you're willing to put in,
Yeah.
as much introspection that you're willing to do, and as much as open minded as you're hoping to be, as you're willing to be. And so, we're going to continue to share our stories. We're going to continue to share our transformations as we walk through this. And, we're going to keep beating you over the head with the mindset stuff, because once it clicks, you're going to get it. And then that's all you're going to be talking about. And you realize that, the mindset stuff should not be a footnote on a long list of CE that you're spending all this time and energy on. Yes, you got to do the CE, but don't put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
This is the horse. So I'm really glad that we're doing this again. It gives me a lot of energy. There's never any lack of things to talk about in the area of development and growth, and so I'm really happy to be doing that for the Pursuit of Ownership again. So I appreciate you taking the time to do it, George.
Sure. And I'm going to leave you guys with something. For me, though, I guess this is a glimpse into my lens. The way I look at my life is I start with, if I could have anything, like I always say it, right? Anything you want in life, nothing off the table, that cliche saying that I stole from Justin. It was that, like that expression, right? Like, but that's the essence of what you go for is best possible scenario, anything you want. Like, what does that look like? Why
Right.
am I going for anything other than that? And
Yeah.
yes, it is a given that you will fail along the way. You are not going to get to that amazing monstrosity of a beautiful picture without stumbling along the way. It's just, I would much rather stumble on the way to that awesome thing than away from that awesome thing because I'm afraid. And so if you're sitting here and you have this goal, something eating you away that you just have to accomplish, why are you not doing everything in your power to get there? It's it you owe it to yourself. You live one life, like go for it. I just can't understand people that don't do that. That's like my pet peeve is you live one life, you have one dream, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Go for it. That's how we operate at Shared Practice as a whole. We all think that way. And so if you think that we're quacks and we, are just like way outside of industry standard, we also accomplish things way outside of industry standard because we think that way. You owe it to yourself to go for it. Jump all in, whatever it is you want. Because at the end of the day, like if I fail, I would much rather fail doing that than just trying to be average.
I cannot think of a better way to capitulate this episode. So I appreciate that, George. And thank you to the audience for holding on for this one. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're looking forward to more because there's certainly going to be some. So thanks, guys, and you'll be hearing from us next week.
Go.